The galactic welcome captain Lisa Rodriguez pressed her palm against the cold viewport of the Terra's Pride, watching as the massive galactic trade station Meridian grew larger in the distance. The structure was impossible to comprehend in its entirety. Kilometers of gleaming metal and energy conduits stretched in all directions, with docking bays that could accommodate vessels the size of cities. Around her flagship, 7 other Earth vessels maintained tight formation, their hulls scarred from the long journey through uncharted space. The human fleet looked pathetically small against the backdrop of alien megastructures. Rodriguez had prepared herself for this moment during the 3-year voyage from Earth, but seeing the reality still made her stomach tighten. These 8 ships represented humanity's greatest achievement in space technology, the culmination of 60 years of advancement since first contact with the galactic community. To her crew, they were marvels of engineering. To the beings waiting at Meridian Station, they would likely be objects of amusement. Commander Jake Morrison approached from the bridge's tactical station, his weathered face showing the same mixture of awe and apprehension that Rodriguez felt. The alien vessels surrounding the station were unlike anything in human experience. Ships that seemed to be made of living crystal drifted past, their surfaces pulsing with inner light. Massive biomechanical constructs that looked more grown than built moved with organic grace through the traffic patterns. Energy beings piloted vessels of pure plasma, their forms barely contained within electromagnetic field generators. Rodriguez activated the communication system, knowing that dozens of alien species would be listening to humanity's first official words to the galactic community. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Terra's Pride, representing the United Earth Space Force. We request permission to dock and begin formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Trade Consortium. The response came immediately, translated by their universal communication device into crisp English. This is Meridian Control. You are cleared for docking bay 779. Please maintain minimum velocity and follow standard approach vectors. Be advised that your vessel design requires manual guidance. Protocols due to primitive propulsion systems. Rodriguez winced at the casual insult embedded in the instructions. Their fusion rockets, the pride of human engineering, were apparently so outdated that the station's automated systems couldn't even recognize them as proper spacecraft propulsion. She gave the necessary orders to her helmsman and tried to maintain her composure as the Terra's Pride was guided into a docking bay clearly designed for cargo haulers and maintenance vessels. The airlock cycle seemed to take forever. When the massive doors finally opened, Rodriguez stepped into an alien world that assaulted her senses. The station's interior was a riot of colors, sounds, and smells that had no earthly equivalent. Beings of every conceivable shape and size moved through corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air, and a few seemed to exist as pure energy patterns that danced along specialized conduits in the walls. Ambassador Kethover of the Zephyrian Republic was waiting for her, his purple crystalline form towering nearly 3 meters tall. His face was a work of geometric art, with faceted features that caught and refracted the station's lighting into prismatic displays. When he spoke, his voice resonated like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, though the words themselves were anything but gentle. Captain Rodriguez, he began, his tone carrying barely concealed condescension. We welcome Earth to the galactic community, though I must say your arrival is somewhat underwhelming. The Galactic Council had hoped that humanity might bring some unique contribution to our civilization. Instead, we see vessels that appear to be constructed using techniques abandoned by most species several millennia ago. Rodriguez forced herself to smile politely. Earth's technology may seem primitive by galactic standards, Ambassador, but we've found that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. We're eager to learn from more advanced civilizations, while sharing our own perspectives on engineering and tactics. This statement seemed to amuse Kethfor greatly. His crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile on a human face. Tactics, he repeated, as if the word were a quaint curiosity. Captain, modern warfare is conducted across vast distances, using weapons that can disrupt the quantum structure of matter itself. Your vessels appear to be armed with kinetic projectiles, metal slugs fired by chemical propulsion. Such weapons were curiosities in our museums before your species learned to make fire. Before Rodriguez could respond, another voice cut through the ambient noise of the station. Admiral Vexlon of the Drakmori Empire approached with the predatory grace of his reptilian species. His scales shifted from deep green to warning orange as he spoke, a display that their cultural briefings had warned indicated either aggression or intense amusement. Kethfor speaks truly, the Drakmori leader hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. But he is being diplomatic. I will be more direct. Your ships are relics, Captain. Pretty museum pieces that would be obliterated in seconds by any proper military vessel. The Drakmori Empire maintains a fleet of 12,000 vessels each, one capable of destroying your entire formation without sustaining damage. Rodriguez felt her jaw clench, but she maintained her diplomatic facade. The Drakmori Empire has an impressive military reputation, Admiral. Earth hopes to learn from your tactical expertise while contributing our own unique approaches to problem-solving. Unique approaches, Vexlon repeated, his scales now flickering between orange and red. Captain, there is nothing unique about primitive thinking. Military doctrine has evolved beyond the simple concepts your species might understand. Modern space combat requires adaptive technologies, quantum prediction algorithms, and weapons. Systems that exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Your ships carry fixed-mount weapons and rely on manual targeting systems. They are antiques. A new presence made itself known as High Counselor Vex Anna of the Ethereal Consortium, materialized nearby. Her species existed as beings of pure energy, contained within sophisticated force field generators that gave her a roughly humanoid appearance composed of swirling light patterns. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Perhaps we judge too harshly, she said, though her tone suggested anything but charity. Humanity has achieved interstellar flight, which is no small accomplishment for a young species. However, the galactic community requires members who can contribute meaningfully to our collective security and prosperity. Earth's current capabilities suggest that observer status might be more appropriate than full membership. Rodriguez felt heat rising in her cheeks. Observer status was essentially a polite way of saying that Earth would be treated as a curiosity rather than an equal partner. She had been prepared for condescension, but the casual dismissal of everything humanity had achieved still stung. What exactly would full membership require? She asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Kethfor's crystalline features rearranged themselves into what was definitely amusement now. Full members must demonstrate the ability to contribute to galactic defense initiatives. The Outer Rim territories face constant threats from pirate fleets, rogue AI systems, and various other hazards. Member species are expected to patrol assigned sectors and respond to emergency situations. Your current fleet would be inadequate for such responsibilities. Admiral Vexlon added his own commentary with obvious relish. The most recent pirate threat alone has destroyed 17 member fleets in the past 2 cycles. These are not the simple raiders your species might be familiar with from your own system. The Void Reapers use technology that adapts to counter our most advanced weapon systems. They phase in and out of normal spacetime, absorb energy weapon impacts, and seem to anticipate our tactical movements before we make them. Rodriguez filed this information away carefully. The Void Reapers sounded like exactly the kind of challenge that might provide humanity with an opportunity to prove their worth. How many ships have been lost to these pirates? She asked. Too many, Vexana replied, her energy patterns flickering with what might have been sadness. The Reapers appeared 3 years ago, and have been growing bolder with each attack. Our best military analysts believe they possess technology that exists outside conventional physical laws. No member species has successfully engaged them without suffering catastrophic losses. Perhaps Earth could assist with this problem, Rodriguez suggested. Human tactical thinking might offer a fresh perspective on the situation. The 3 alien leaders exchanged glances that managed to convey volumes. Despite their radically different physiologies, the suggestion seemed to simultaneously amuse and horrify them. Asterisk. Captain Rodriguez, Cuthbert said gently, as if explaining something to a child. The Void Reapers had defeated fleets equipped with quantum disruptors, temporal manipulation devices, and reality distortion fields. Your ships are armed with metal, projectiles, and chemical explosives. Sending you against the Reapers would not be warfare. It would be elaborate suicide. Vexlon was less diplomatic. Your species would last perhaps 30 seconds against Reaper technology. We have sensor recordings of their last attack. Their ships simply ignored plasma cannon fire that should have vaporized them instantly. They passed through energy barriers that have stopped the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. What do you imagine your primitive kinetics could accomplish against such capabilities? Rodriguez absorbed these comments without flinching, though inwardly she was processing tactical possibilities at a rapid rate. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and found ways to prevail through ingenuity and determination. The fact that these advanced civilizations had failed against the Void Reapers didn't necessarily mean that Earth's approach would also fail. Earth appreciates the galactic community's concern for our safety, she said carefully. However, we believe that diversity of approach is valuable in military operations. Different perspectives can sometimes reveal solutions that uniform thinking might miss. Hi. Counselor Vexana's energy patterns shifted to what their briefings had indicated was polite disagreement. Captain, the galactic community has existed for over 50,000 years. Every possible approach to space combat has been explored, refined, and optimized. There are no new perspectives to be discovered, particularly not by a species that has barely achieved interstellar capability. Rodriguez nodded slowly, knowing that further argument would only reinforce their impression of human naivety. Very well, she said. Earth accepts observer status for now. We hope to demonstrate our value to the community through peaceful contributions to galactic civilization. The 3 alien leaders seemed relieved that she had accepted their judgment without further protest. Cuthbert gestured toward a nearby corridor with one of his crystalline appendages. Excellent. We have prepared quarters for your delegation in the diplomatic section. Your crews may remain aboard their vessels, though we recommend against extended stays. The docking bays assigned to cargo haulers are not equipped with the amenities that biological species typically require. Rodriguez thanked them for their hospitality and began walking toward the indicated corridor, her mind already working on the real problem. The Void Reapers represented exactly the kind of challenge that could elevate Earth's status in the galactic community. More importantly, they seemed to have found ways to counter every advanced technology that the aliens possessed. That suggested they were either incredibly sophisticated, or they had discovered fundamental weaknesses in the galactic community's approach to warfare. As she settled into her assigned quarters, Rodriguez began composing a coded message to Earth Command. The official report would describe the meeting with alien leaders and Earth's assignment to observer status. The unofficial message would contain her analysis of the Void Reaper situation and her recommendation for humanity's next move. The aliens thought they were protecting Earth from a threat too dangerous for human ships to handle. Rodriguez suspected they were actually protecting the Void Reapers from an enemy they had never encountered before. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most advanced solution to a problem was to go back to basics. 3 months later, the lesson would begin. The lesson in humility. Emergency klaxons throughout Meridian Station had been wailing for 6 hours straight. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood in the command center's observation deck, watching the tactical display with growing understanding. Red dots representing Void Reaper vessels moved through the celestial graveyard nebula like predators stalking prey. Blue dots marked the positions of 3 separate alien fleets that had responded to the distress call from the Nexus Mining Collective. Admiral Vexlon paced behind the tactical officers, his scales fluctuating between deep red and black in patterns. That indicated extreme agitation. The Drakmori commander, who had so confidently dismissed human military capabilities 3 months ago, now looked like a predator who had suddenly found himself being hunted. Ambassador Kethver stood motionless near the central display, his crystalline form refracting the harsh emergency lighting into fragments of color that danced across the walls. His usual air of superiority had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like fear. High Counselor Vexana manifested near the main communication console, her energy patterns cycling through configurations that their cultural database identified as intense concentration mixed with growing desperation. The Nexus Mining Collective represents 12 inhabited worlds and over 4 billion beings, she announced to the assembled command staff. The Void Reapers have never attacked a target this large before. If we cannot stop them here, they will have access to resources that could fuel expansion across the entire Outer Rim. Rodriguez watched the tactical display with professional interest. The alien fleets had positioned themselves in a classic defensive formation around the mining worlds, using their most advanced vessels as mobile shields for the fixed defensive platforms. It was textbook galactic military doctrine, executed with precision and backed by weapons technology that surpassed human understanding. It was also exactly what the Void Reapers seemed to be expecting. The first contact between the fleets occurred at maximum sensor range. The Zephyrian Second Battle Group opened fire with quantum disruption cannons that could theoretically unmake matter at the subatomic level. The beams passed through the Reaper vessels as if they were ghosts, causing no apparent damage. The Ethereal Consortium's 7th Fleet tried temporal manipulation weapons that aged targets by millennia in seconds. The Reaper ships seemed to exist outside the time stream, unaffected by attacks that should have reduced them to cosmic dust. The Drakmori Imperial Guard unleashed reality distortion fields that twisted spacetime itself into impossible geometries. The Void Reapers navigated through the distorted space as easily as flying through vacuum. Then the aliens' most advanced weapons systems began failing in sequence. Not destroyed, but simply ceasing to function. The quantum cannons powered down, without explanation. The temporal manipulators reset to safe mode despite desperate attempts to reactivate them. The reality distortion generators became inert masses of exotic matter. Rodriguez realized what she was witnessing. The Void Reapers weren't just immune to advanced alien technology. They were somehow turning it against itself, using the complexity of these weapon systems as a vulnerability to exploit. The tactical display showed the inevitable result. Without their primary weapons, the alien fleets found themselves facing an enemy that could phase through their shields, ignore their secondary armaments, and systematically disable their ships without sustaining any apparent damage. 3 of the most powerful military formations in galactic history were being methodically dismantled by vessels that seemed to barely acknowledge their existence. Admiral Vexlon's voice cracked with strain as he issued orders to his remaining ships. All units fall back to defensive positions around Nexus Prime. Implement Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha. Prepare for close engagement. Rodriguez knew enough about galactic military procedures to understand what that meant. The alien commanders were preparing to sacrifice their fleets in desperate ramming attacks, hoping that physical impact might succeed where energy weapons had failed. It was a tactic of absolute last resort, and everyone in the command center knew it was unlikely to work. Asterisk. High Counselor Vexana turned toward Rodriguez with an expression that would have been recognizable as desperation on any human face. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying none of its earlier condescension, "Earth's observer status grants you the right to request emergency consultation with the Galactic Council. We ... We formally request any assistance that humanity might be able to provide." Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment since her arrival at Meridian Station. The same alien leaders who had dismissed human capabilities as primitive curiosities were now begging for Earth's help. She could have enjoyed the irony, but there were 4 billion lives hanging in the balance. "I'll need complete tactical command authority," she said without hesitation. "No restrictions on engagement protocols, no questions about human military doctrine, and no interference from galactic command structures. Ambassador Kethver's crystalline features rearranged themselves into an expression of shock. "Captain, you have 8 vessels against a Reaper fleet that has just destroyed over 300 of our most advanced warships. What could you possibly accomplish with such limited resources?" Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the battle. Began. "Ambassador, you're about to learn something about human military thinking. Sometimes the most advanced solution to a problem is to use the simplest approach." Asterisk. She activated her communication system and sent an encrypted message to the Terra's Pride. All human vessels were positioned at the edge of the nebula, officially assigned to evacuation duty for any survivors from the main battle. Now they received new orders. "All Earthships, this is Captain Rodriguez. Operation Throwback is now active. Implement radio silence and proceed to attack positions using manual navigation only. Weapons free, but remember the doctrine. No energy signatures until after primary engagement. Make our ancestors proud." The tactical display showed 8 tiny dots separating from their evacuation positions and moving deeper into the nebula. Compared to the massive alien vessels, the human ships looked like insects approaching a herd of elephants. Admiral Vexlon watched the human fleet's movement with obvious confusion. "Captain Rodriguez, your ships are heading directly into the Reaper formation. They will be destroyed before they can even begin an attack run." Rodriguez checked her chronometer. The human ships would reach optimal engagement range in approximately 14 minutes. She had that long to explain 20,000 years of human military evolution to beings who had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. "Admiral," she began, "galactic military doctrine is based on technological supremacy. Your ships rely on computer-controlled targeting systems, automated defensive protocols, and weapons that require massive power generation systems. The Void Reapers have found ways to turn all of that complexity against you." She gestured toward the tactical display, where the alien fleets were still trying unsuccessfully to reactivate their disabled weapon systems. "Human military doctrine is different. We've spent our entire history fighting enemies who had advantages over us. Superior numbers, better equipment, higher technology. We learned to win by being unpredictable, adaptable, and willing to do things that our enemies would consider impossible." Vexana's energy patterns shifted to configurations that indicated intense curiosity mixed with skepticism. "Captain, the Void Reapers have demonstrated immunity to every weapon system in the galactic arsenal. What makes you believe that Earth's primitive armaments will succeed where our most advanced technology has failed?" Rodriguez pointed to the tactical display, where the first human ship was approaching the edge of the Reaper formation. "Because, Counselor, our weapons aren't advanced enough for the Reapers to neutralize. They've adapted to counter-quantum physics and exotic matter manipulation. They haven't adapted to simple kinetic energy. The Terras. Pride opened fire at point-blank range with every kinetic weapon in her arsenal. Railguns launched solid metal projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Magnetic accelerators hurled depleted uranium penetrators designed to punch through armor by sheer physical force. Chemical explosive warheads delivered their payloads through direct contact rather than energy transfer. The Void Reaper vessel that had been phasing through quantum disruption beams and ignoring temporal manipulation fields suddenly found itself dealing with chunks of metal that obeyed only the most basic laws of physics. The projectiles punched through its hull like bullets through paper, causing catastrophic structural damage that no amount of technological sophistication could prevent. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the first Reaper ship broke apart under the impact of what they considered museum-piece weaponry. The human ships pressed their attack with tactics that seemed to come from a completely different era of warfare. Commander Sarah Kim of the U's Defiant led a flanking maneuver that would have been familiar to naval officers from Earth's ancient oceans. Lieutenant David Park of the UES Resolute executed a boarding action using nothing but magnetic clamps and plasma cutters, leading his crew into hand-to-hand combat inside a Reaper vessel's corridors. The Void Reapers, faced with an enemy that fought according to principles they had never encountered, began making mistakes. Their ships clustered together for mutual protection, creating perfect targets for human weapons designed to cause maximum damage through explosive force rather than exotic physics. Captain Rodriguez watched the battle unfold with the satisfaction of someone who had spent months planning for this exact scenario. The human fleet was outnumbered 50-1, but they were fighting an enemy that had been optimized to counter technologies that humans had never possessed. The turning point came when Commander Morrison of the UES Retribution made a decision that no galactic military computer would have recommended. His ship, badly damaged and running low on ammunition, accelerated directly toward the largest Reaper vessel at maximum velocity. Instead of trying to phase through the impact, the Reaper ship attempted to absorb the kinetic energy as it had. Absorbed energy weapon attacks. The collision vaporized both vessels instantly, but the explosion created a chain reaction that disabled the Reaper's coordination network. Suddenly, the enemy ships were operating as individuals rather than as a coordinated fleet, and individual Reaper vessels proved to be much less formidable opponents. The remaining human ships pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency. They used asteroid fields as cover, lured enemy vessels into collision courses with space debris, and exploited every weakness that their primitive sensors could detect. When they ran out of ammunition, they improvised weapons from mining equipment and construction materials. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it ended, the celestial graveyard nebula contained the wreckage of the entire Void Reaper attack. Fleet. 7 human ships remained operational, their hulls scarred but their crews triumphant. The command center at Meridian Station had been silent for the past hour, with hundreds of alien officers staring at tactical displays that showed something they had believed impossible. A fleet of primitive vessels had accomplished what their most advanced technology could not. Admiral Vexlon was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know? How did you know that simple kinetic weapons would succeed where our most sophisticated systems failed?" Rodriguez turned away from the tactical display and faced the assembled alien commanders. "Admiral, you've spent 50,000 years developing increasingly complex solutions to military problems. You've forgotten that sometimes the most effective approach is also the most direct one. The Void Reapers adapted to counter your advanced technology because they understood it. They never bothered to adapt to our primitive methods because they assumed such methods were irrelevant." She gestured toward the display, showing the debris field where the Reaper fleet had been destroyed. "Humanity has always been good at finding ways to win fights that we're supposed to lose. We've had to be. Now the galaxy knows that sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best ones. Ambassador, Kethvor's crystalline form had shifted to colors that indicated deep respect mixed with embarrassment. Captain Rodriguez, the Galactic Council hereby extends an offer of full membership to Earth, along with a formal request that humanity assume primary responsibility for galactic defense initiatives. Your tactical expertise has proven invaluable. Rodriguez nodded graciously, though inwardly she was savoring the moment. Earth accepts the Council's offer, Ambassador. We look forward to sharing our unique perspective on military doctrine with the galactic community. I believe you'll find that human methods, while primitive by your standards, can be quite effective when properly applied. Asterisk as the surviving human ships docked at Meridian Station, crews from dozens of alien species gathered to examine the vessels that had accomplished the impossible. The same ships that had been dismissed as museum pieces 3 months ago were now being studied as examples of superior military engineering. Rodriguez stood at the observation deck, watching alien technicians marvel at the simplicity of human weapons systems. The railguns that had been mocked as primitive were now being reverse-engineered by species that had forgotten the basic principles of kinetic warfare. Commander Morrison approached from the docking bay, his uniform torn and his face showing the exhaustion of extended combat. The crew casualties had been heavy, but nowhere near as catastrophic as the losses suffered by the alien fleets. Captain, he said, the Galactic Council is requesting detailed tactical reports on our engagement methods. They want to integrate human military doctrine into their defense protocols. Rodriguez smiled as she watched a team of Zephyrian engineers attempting to understand the targeting system of a human railgun. Tell them we'll be happy to provide training and consultation services, Commander. It seems the galaxy has finally learned that there's more than one way to fight a war. The message would spread throughout the galactic community within days. Humanity, the species that had been granted observer status because their technology was too primitive for serious consideration, had saved civilization using methods that were older than most alien species' recorded history. The age of human military doctrine had begun, and the galaxy would never underestimate Earth's capabilities again.